Welcome back to Ranking TMNT Characters. Today we are going to be ranking April O'Neil. I still have not put together an April cosplay, but I do have my Irma cosplay, which feels pretty fitting for this video. As a reminder, we are only sticking to the 10 on-screen adaptations of TMNT for simplicity's sake. With that, let's get into the ranking. In last place is April from the 2007 film TMNT. This is probably a surprising placement when there are two other popular contenders for the worst April. However, as I was writing the script for this video, I realized that although there isn't anything I dislike about 2007 April, there isn't anything I really like about her either. The only times we see the iconic April sass is when she's with Casey, and even then it doesn't feel like playful banter and more her complaining about him being irresponsible. Unlike some of the other versions of April and Casey, I don't feel like they have great chemistry here. They seem like they were paired together only because it's an established pairing in the franchise, and this film can be seen as a continuation of the 90s trilogy. One thing I do find kind of fun is that they made April an archaeologist as a nod to Second Time Around. I find 2007 April to be pretty boring. She mainly serves as a plot device, providing exposition for Leo about the other turtles and introducing us to Max Winters. In 7th place is April O'Neil from the 2010s live-action films. Back when I first watched these movies, I hated this depiction of April because I felt like Megan Fox didn't suit the role and her personality felt muddied and boring. Although I stand by Megan Fox being a miscast, I think these films do interesting things with her character that make her more compelling than 2007 April. But there are a couple of things that I want to address about her character that I don't really like. Number 1, sometimes the ways that she's written make her come across as dumb, such as the conspiracy board scene where she's explaining the Ninja Turtles to her boss and she gets fired. Honestly, this might come down to casting again, because I think with a different actress, this scene could have worked a little bit better to put us on April's side. Because I know if I was in Bernadette Thompson's shoes, I would have fired April too. She was making no sense. And number 2, the sexualization of April is unsettling. Fortunately, it's not a prominent staple of her character, nor her primary attribute, but the way that Mikey and Vern objectify her is really unfortunate. However, I consider that to be more of a reflection on Mikey and Vern as characters than April. There's also a scene at the start of Out of the Shadows where she wears a revealing schoolgirl outfit. Very male-gazy and icky. However, unlike her objectification in the first film, she is intentionally weaponizing this outfit to download information from Baxter Stockman's computer. I am certain that the intention of this scene was to highlight Megan Fox being sexy, but in universe it showcases April being kind of a badass, which I enjoy. Negatives out of the way, there are actually quite a few things I really like about Bay vs. April. I thoroughly enjoy what they did with her backstory and how it weaves a more personal connection with the turtles. It gives us a nod to April being a scientist in some iterations while still allowing her to become a reporter in reference of other iterations. Despite my dislike of Megan Fox's delivery of the character, they do replicate her fierce and determined personality, and she feels more true to April O'Neil than 2007 April does. Bay vs. April is definitely one of the weakest interpretations of April O'Neil and has some glaring flaws. However, I think she's a decent version of the character and is dismissed as awful a little too readily. Again, I hated her at first, but upon rewatch and further reflection, she's not as terrible as people make her out to be. In 6th place, I have April from the 2012 animated series. There's a lot that I love about this character. She has that classic April fighting spirit and some really cool arcs, especially when exploring her powers and ties to the Krang. Unfortunately, a lot of April's character, especially early in the series, gets bogged down by the whole mess that is the love triangle. I mentioned this for Casey, and I will mention it again for Donnie, but the whole situation brings out the worst in all three characters, and I think April suffered the most. Which is really unfortunate, because not only do I enjoy all three of them immensely outside of the love triangle, but I think the relationship between April and Donnie could have been really cute if it was executed better. Even if they wanted to keep it vague and open-ended, look at how they've handled it in Mutant Mayhem so far as an example of how one of the turtles crushing on April could work without diminishing either of them. April also has a few little moments that make her kind of unlikable, as I highlighted in my Problem with Apritello video. In an early season 1 episode, Donnie asks April about a piece of technology he found, and without even looking up from her computer, she dismisses him.
Do you know what this is?
No?
When Donnie fails to save April from falling in the mutagen and she swims out unscathed, the first thing she does is give Donnie a bitter look as she spits out,
"Nice catch, Donnie!"
In one episode, she accuses Donnie of wanting to team up with Karai simply because she's pretty. She also eats all of Donnie's food at one point, which is just Rude. That being said, the main reason people dislike April is because of the way she leads Donnie and Casey on, as I explained earlier. I would recommend watching that video if you want a bit more of a deep dive into April's character and how the love triangle was not handled well. Those flaws acknowledged, 2012 April is a really cool and fun interpretation of the character. This is the first version of TMNT in which April is a teenager like the Turtles, and according to a poll I did on TikTok with about 1,700 responses, 58% of people said they prefer when April is a teenager. It allows her to connect and have a friendship with the Turtles so much easier. Although I wish April's relationships with the Turtles besides Donnie were highlighted a bit more, she generally has great chemistry with all of them. 2012 April doesn't deserve nearly the amount of hate that she receives, and I still adore her as a character, but when examining her flaws compared to other Aprils, she does not deserve to be that high on the list. In 5th place is April from Mutant Mayhem and Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. April was easily my favorite character from the film. She radiated personality, she felt like an authentic teenager just trying to fit in, and maintained a lot of the confidence we see with other versions of April while simultaneously bringing something new to the table, especially exploring her anxiety and overcoming it not only to help her friends, but to move towards her passion of being a reporter. Like I mentioned earlier, Mutant Mayhem April is a love interest for one of the Turtles. However, unlike 2012 April, it never overshadows her individuality and is depicted in a way that is far more healthy than the whole mess that is the 2012 love triangle. Season 1 of Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles didn't focus on April as much as the film because it was more centered around the individual turtles, but we got to see her have some pretty fun banter with Leo, as well as highlighting her relationship with Splinter, which is something I always love to see showcased. I still think Mutant Mayhem April has a lot of potential, and I hope we get to see her highlighted more in Season 2 of Tales and in the sequel movie. At number 4 is April from the 90s live-action trilogy. Now, the last time I ranked the Aprils on my TikTok, I got several comments of people complaining that I did not distinguish between Judith Hoag and Paige Turco's depictions of April. This ranking is not about specific portrayals of April O'Neil. It is about different versions of April, the character. Yes, April was recast for Secret of the Ooze, but she is meant to be the same person. What's even more ridiculous is that there were a couple of people in my comments trying to convince me that it made more sense that there were 2 Aprils in this universe than Paige Turco being the same April from the first film. Where is the logic? Rant aside, there is only one April O'Neil in the 90s live-action trilogy. She is played by 2 different actresses, but she is one character. April in the 90s films is kind of a mix between her portrayal in the 1987 and 2003 series. She's always looking out for the Turtles, giving them a place to stay, and being incredibly patient with their brotherly shenanigans. They do a phenomenal job of capturing her sass and fiery personality while also showcasing that she is incredibly competent and dedicated to her job. Although no version of Capril can top their relationship in 2003, I do thoroughly enjoy her dynamic with Casey in the first film. One thing that has always bothered me about 90s April is when she's hanging out with the Turtles, it kind of feels weird knowing that she's an adult woman hanging out with a bunch of teenage boys. April in these films doesn't give me super strong big sister vibes like she does in some of the other versions, and so it makes her hanging out with the Turtles feel more like she's trying to just be friends with them, which is a little bit off. I also think April's characterization definitely decreased in quality for the sequels, which isn't really Paige Turco's fault and more the fault of the writing not being as good for April. However, she's a very solid depiction of April that has fantastic chemistry with the other characters, especially the Turtles, Splinter, and Casey. Moving into my top 3, in 3rd place is April from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This series more deliberately leans into the older sister vibes, and her being around the same age as the Turtles helps emphasize that sibling dynamic even further. Like with a lot of other versions, April is closest to Donnie, but Rise also highlights her close and meaningful relationships with the other 3 turtles. They banter, they look out for each other, and she is quite literally accepted as part of the Hamato family. If Rise was given the opportunity to continue into its 3rd season, I would have loved to learn how April met the turtles and befriended them in the first place. But beyond her relationships with the turtles, Rise April has such a big personality, adopting the same confidence and sass we we see in other interpretations, but turning it up to match the energy of the rest of the show's cast. She is genuinely such an amazing interpretation of April, and I absolutely adore her. In second place is April from the 1987 animated series. It was really hard to decide between second and third place, but I ended up putting 1987 April above Rise April because although I love April from Rise, I'm kind of obsessed with 87 April. Or maybe it's the Irma cosplay that's making me biased, I don't know. There is so much I absolutely adore about 1987 April. Not only does she have the big sister vibes that a lot of versions of April maintain, when the turtles get turned into toddlers, they literally refer to her as Auntie April, but she's incredibly sassy, confident, determined, and independent. Although she does fall into the damsel in distress trope quite a bit, it is a trope that is occasionally challenged, and when she is kidnapped, it never shakes her confidence. April's interactions with her coworkers at Channel 6 are one of my favorite things about this show, and it is a dynamic that is entirely unique to this iteration. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. TMNT needs to bring back the Channel 6 crew. We've seen Vernon and Bern Thompson brought back in the live action films, but no Irma. Irma was technically brought back in 2012, but I don't consider this abomination to actually be an interpretation of Irma. The entire Channel 6 crew does exist as background characters in the IDW continuity, but we don't ever see their dynamic, especially not with April's involvement. I desperately want to see a reinterpretation of April, Irma, Vernon, and Bern in another universe. April's interactions with these three are a huge part of why I love her character so much. More specifically, April is one of my favorite ships in the entirety of TMNT, and Irma has been neglected by this franchise in a way that I will not stand for. In first place is April O'Neil from the 2003 animated series. I love her so much. Not only is she very intelligent, when we first meet her she's working for Baxter Stockman, but she's incredibly caring and super badass. There's one episode where she, Casey, and Splinter break into the EPF to rescue the turtles, and she absolutely carries that episode. This April also embraces a lot of the traits that I've mentioned loving about other versions, the big sister vibes, the sass, the confidence. We also see her relationship with Splinter showcased a lot, which is delightful. Plus, she and Casey are one of, if not the best written canon romantic relationships in the entire franchise. They did a phenomenal job of writing their dynamic. The only issue I really have with April, and Casey as well, is that we saw less and less of them as the series progressed, which is an absolute tragedy. And April's god-awful redesign from Back to the Sewer, I don't know who that girl is, but she is not 2003 April. Otherwise, I love 2003 April so much, and she is easily my favorite version of April O'Neil. That does it for my April O'Neil ranking. Let me know if you agree or disagree with these placements. But now that we've ranked all of the on-screen Aprils, let me tell you about my version of April O'Neil from TMNT Genesis. We have also reached the point in the video where it is no longer scripted. So this might be a mess, let's get into it. Like with Casey, April is a little bit older than the Turtles. She's about 17 years old and is a senior in high school. As far as her voice goes, I currently have her being voiced by Linda Cardellini, who is the voice of Wendy Corduroy in Gravity Falls.
I am the lifeguard. I make the rules, sucker! Boosh! Sorry, Stan, it's not up to me. Actually, it is. This is literally too dumb for me to care about. Get back, or I will drop kick him, I swear!
I'm not married to this being her voice. I think it works well for her, but I also think there could be a better voice out there, so let me know if you have any suggestions. As I mentioned in the Casey video, both of them have a parent who is dead and a parent who's in the hospital. April's father, Kirby O'Neil, died when she was 3 years old. This death was not an accident because Kirby worked for TCRI. When I get to Splinter's video, I'll get a bit more into the details about Kirby O'Neil working for TCRI because he and Hamato Yoshi were friends, but the TLDR is Kirby O'Neil found some info on TCRI doing not good things, namely trying to terraform Earth to be like Dimension X, and so they, killed him off. Fast forward to the present day, April and her mom are living above the antique store second time around. April helps her mom run second time around by working there whenever she needs help. Well, in the first episode of the series, second time around gets jumped by the purple dragons, and also the Foot step in to interfere and prevent the purple dragons from completely destroying the place because they've been monitoring Carol and April because Kirby O'Neil was April's father and knew some shit about them. They don't specifically think that April and Carol have anything that Kirby was researching, but they've constantly monitored them in order to see if there's anything that comes up. So when the purple dragons jump them, and the purple dragons are known for making a mess, TCRI steps in with their new partners, the Foot Clan. And their stepping in didn't exactly work out because in the chaos, the turtles show up. We've got a 3-way fight going on in second time around, and through the chaos of that fight, the building burns down. So rest in peace second time around, and now Carol is in the hospital from her injuries with the fire. In the aftermath of the fire, April goes to stay with her uncle and cousin, August and Vernon. So yeah, Vernon Fenwick is April's cousin because I think they have such a fun sibling dynamic in the 1987 series, so I wanted to include that. But I mentioned the turtles showing up at second time around, and that's where April meets the turtles. There is a subsequent follow-up adventure that I haven't fully fleshed out in which she solidifies their friendship, and in that April learns about Hamato Yoshi and Kirby O'Neill being friends, and that, you know, the giant rat man that she thought she saw as a child was actually real and was Hamato Yoshi. When it comes to her relationship with Mikey, she'll occasionally kind of help him sneak out and go into town and do some fun stuff, like go bowling or whatever activity Mikey wants to do on that day. And Mikey often will kind of help talk April through her relationship problems, whether it be with her friends, with Donnie, or with Irma, which I will get to soon. When April expresses interest in studying martial arts again because she did martial arts as a kid, and now that she's friends with ninjas, she's like, I kind of want to get into that again. I don't know what specific type of martial arts, because I don't know martial arts super well. But she trains with Leo. And I haven't mentioned this on YouTube yet, but Leo does go through kind of a journey of self-discovery with their identity. And so as Leo is trying to figure out what they identify as, April is very supportive and helpful when it comes to that. As with a lot of characters when it comes to Raph, April doesn't have a super strong relationship with him, but occasionally when she's training, she'll spar with Raph, and also Raph goes to April for advice when it comes to Mona Lisa, which is really cute because Raph is not very good at expressing his feelings, and then when he and Mona Lisa are kind of becoming a thing, then he gets kind of shy about it and is like, April, I need help. Also because April is Mona Lisa's classmate before she gets mutated, but I will get into that at another time. When it comes to Casey, they have a very similar dynamic to the classic Capril banter that we see in other iterations, but they're more platonic. Again, I mentioned in Casey's video that I could see them being a cute couple, but that's just not what I went for them. In a similar vein, at the start of the series, Donnie has a fat little crush on April, but very quickly learns that she is a lesbian, so that's not gonna work out for him. And then they just become really close friends, and they love talking about science stuff together, and they kind of serve as wingmen for each other when it comes to getting with their respective partners. In Donnie's case, it's Casey, like I explained in their video, and as for April, her love interest is Irma. I feel like this should not be a surprise based on the cosplay I'm wearing right now. We meet Irma pretty early on in this series, and she goes to school with April and is a part of the little newspaper reporter club. I don't know what I want to call it specifically, but this is where we kind of get that Channel 6 dynamic that I want to see highlighted, because Vernon and Bern Thompson are also in this club, and Irma gets really close with April, and at a certain point they kind of get romantic and start dating. But Irma is not all she appears to be. No, she is not a Krang. I'm putting that out there because that shit pisses me off. But it's not that far from the truth, because Irma may or may not be a spy, and may or may not have been told to get close to April to get intel on the turtles. For somebody. I bet you can't guess who. I haven't read When Worlds Collide, which is a very popular Leo Sagi fanfic for the Rise universe, but there is kind of inspiration there from what I know about it, where it's like, oh, getting close to this person to spy, and oh no, wait, I actually have feelings for them, what do I do? But that's kind of the dynamic I want to go for with April and Irma in TMNT Genesis, so that'll be fun to explore. And that's about it. When it comes to April, that's kind of the general gist of my plans for her. Feel free to ask any questions about April or TMNT Genesis in general in the comments, especially if you have any suggestions for her voice, because again, I'm fine with what I have for her, but I'm not super confident in it. I'm gonna go film some Irma cosplay videos now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.